On our agenda is to approve the minutes of our previous meeting from 9/16 of 19. Any revisions or corrections necessary for the minutes? If not, a motion to approve would be appropriate. Motion by McElhaney, is there a second? Second by Herbst. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. Minutes are approved. Item number 2 is to consider approval or denial of various license applications. You have the list before you this evening. The Liquor License Review Subcommittee met prior to this meeting and has recommended the approval of Class B beer and liquor license for Wisconsin Apple LLC, which will be doing business as Applebee's Neighborhood Grill and Bar. They also approved Class B beer and liquor license application by Me Now LLC, doing business as Chow on 3rd Street. So the recommendation from the subcommittee was unanimous to approve both of those. Also on our batch of licenses tonight, there are a couple of denial recommendations, and under our ordinance, anyone recommended for denial is given the right to address this committee and talk about things on their record that may be either factually inaccurate or immaterial. With that, the first person recommended for denial is Shar Kanzela. Do we have Shar with us this evening? Come on up, Shar. State your name and address for the record. And then
my name is Shar Kanzela, and my address is 10804 Bittersweet Road, Wausau, 54401.
Okay. And then I guess talk to us about the record. The record has been reviewed and recommended for denial by the police chief based on some things that were noted on the record. And obviously, our ordinance gives you the option to submit additional documentation or proof of rehab for him to further review, but his review has yielded still a denial recommendation.
Correct. He did receive the letter, and he did still recommend to deny my bartending license. And so basically, the main reason because of the denial is of a bond that I will be off of by November 5th, as I spoke to my attorney. And as a bartender, you're legally not allowed to drink really behind the bar either way. Financially, I do rely on this job, and I definitely like it a lot, so it was disappointing when I heard that it was being denied, possibly.
And the bond condition expires when in November?
November 5th.
Okay. Because, a bartender license really just allows you to tend bar alone and be in control of the premises by yourself.
Yeah.
You can still work there as long as another licensed bartender is with you. And, obviously, if his recommendation is for denial based on that offense, it just as one committee member, I think what I would like to do is hold off and wait and see what happens. She certainly has the right to reapply once the bond condition has been removed. But
I'd like to ask her, how do you know what circumstance is coming up that you believe your bond conditions will be dropped? Are you entering a plea on
Yes,
November
the
5th?
files, no files were charged against me for the domestic, so it was a domestic. It really has nothing to do with drinking, so it's,
Well,
yeah.
it says there were charges against you. Are they dismissing their charges, or are you doing a deferred entry of judgment, or?
Yeah, the charges are not particularly from my roommate. He's not pressing charges, is what he did tell the officer.
Okay. So what we could do, the committee could defer their decision on this application until the November meeting. If
Okay.
you're confident that that's going to take care of itself early in November.
Yes, ma'am.
This committee meets the third Monday of every month, and so
Okay.
if the committee would agree to defer action on your application until then, if your circumstances are different and the chief's recommendation might then be different, we certainly could wait and consider your application next month.
Okay, yeah,
And then
certainly.
you just wouldn't work alone until then, but maybe we could consider it then after that has passed.
Okay.
What are your thoughts, committee? Would you want to wait with
I was
Shar?
going to say, according to our information, there's a charge from, was it September 18th? And that's, at this point, it's just a charge, so I would say we'd almost have to, I wouldn't feel good denying the license based on the charge, but I wouldn't be comfortable approving it with that dangling out there either, so I think the deferral is a good idea.
Wait till our November meeting and see what
Well, wait till
happens.
that other thing resolves, either
Okay.
she's charged or she's not.
Or she's not, yeah. Okay, the committee seems to be in agreement then that we'll hold action on yours then until our next meeting.
Okay.
And we'll bring you back for consideration at that meeting.
Okay, will I receive a letter
So-
in the mail in regards to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and then keep in touch with the clerk's office also about, what happens with those bond conditions. If they're removed, let them know right away.
Okay.
So that they can let us know in our meeting materials.
Okay, perfect.
All right, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Also recommended then for denial is Bradley Sharkowitz. Bradley Sharkowitz here? Okay. Come on up, Bradley, and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Bradley Sharkowitz, live at 601 and a half West Thomas Street.
Okay. And I guess, have you submitted additional information to be considered by the chief as far as?
I did not, but I do have it with me right
Okay.
now.
It has to go to the
Oh, it
police
has to
chief.
go
The
directly
committee
to the
can't
chief.
review it on the fly.
All right,
That said, I guess we could actually do the same thing. Wait until the chief reviews his evidence and consider you next month.
all right.
So you can give that evidence to the clerk, and then she'll get it down to the police department, and we'll consider it next month then.
Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Next denial recommendation, there is only one more, is public transport driver for Benjamin Tyler. Is Ben Tyler in the audience with us tonight to speak to the committee? Benjamin Tyler? Let the record show he has not appeared. With that, then you've also got some license renewals, you've got some special events, you've got the Wausau Rotary Reindeer Run 5K on December 7th. All of those are in the batch together. With that, a motion to accept or deny licenses as recommended by staff would be appropriate, and we'll note that the applications for Conzella and Sharkowitz are removed from the batch and held for next month. Do we have a motion? Motion by McElhaney, is there a second? Second by Peckham. Further discussion or questions? If not, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. So those licenses, with the exception of the two I mentioned, are either accepted or denied as recommended. Okay, and then with that, if the committee is not opposed, I'd like to move one item up. We've got a fair amount of public comment, and we've received a lot of correspondence today on one particular agenda item, and I think if we can move that item up, which is item number 6, we can get people where they need to be a little quicker. That's discussion and possible action regarding an ordinance creating section 9.04.090, public display or processing of animals. I guess I'll lead this item by saying this one has drawn as much or more public concern than most other agenda items that we've seen in recent years. This item comes to us, I believe, because we've received each year, we receive a couple of resident complaints, I believe over on the southeast side for a resident that hangs a deer waiting for it to be processed. And the neighbors then, I believe, are offended by the site. So that said, we received a request to consider such an ordinance. And so we have it before us tonight. We have received and documented as public comment dozens of emails against this measure. We've also received, I would say, dozens of phone calls between us all. But with that, I think what I'd like to do is have some discussion from within the committee first, and then we will also accept public comment with the item. And I guess the resident that brought the issue forward originally, or residents that brought the issue forward, are they in your district, Mr. Peckham? Can you give us a little background, I guess?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Situation is that last year, about this time, one of the residents who lives very near the elementary school got a deer, and he doesn't have a backyard to speak of, and so he hung it in his driveway. He's got a fairly short driveway, and it's right on the way to school. So there was a fuss about that, and at the time, in my recollection, all I heard was, this is bad, we should do something about it, maybe we need a rule. And so I asked if there was anything on the books regarding hanging carcasses, and there wasn't. And so I asked, maybe we should have something. And I got a little feedback that said, yeah, maybe we should look at that. And that was 51 weeks ago. And based on the reaction this time from what I think is a broader segment of the community, I would say we would be smart to walk away from this one, but be interested in hearing what other people have to say.
That's pretty much what all the feedback I've received has. I've actually was contacted this morning before 8 o'clock from a board member from the DNR that had mentioned that they statewide have difficulty getting people to continue to engage in the practice of legal hunting and fishing and keep families involved in activities like that. And they had a serious concern for when a person takes an animal legally and they need, a short amount of time to get that animal in for processing and, store that so that the meat isn't damaged. A municipal ordinance that would hinder their ability to hang the animal, either to preserve the meat or rapidly cool it, is very offensive to most hunters. And so we've received a fair amount of negative attention for this one.
I think it's running about 10 to 1 at this point. I am getting some support. The people are a little shy to state it publicly, but it's just a real flip from last year. Last year, basically all I heard was, can we do something about this? And felt it was my responsibility to find out if we could or not. And now we're here, and folks aren't happy.
Yeah, it's running about 30 to 0 in my area. Becky, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know this was a problem until it hit the agenda. And so as long as I've been a council member, I've not had one complaint ever. I'm way on the northeast side, I don't know, but I've lived here a long time and I don't remember any problem with that. I'm always reticent to do any ordinance that affects a large amount of people for something that there is not a large swath of complaints or there's not any kind of specific reason other than I know there's a couple people that are upset. I get it, but we choose to live in a community, and in that community, we all need to be good neighbors. And I hope that, and we have to put up with some stuff that other people do that we don't like, and you may do something they don't like, and that's what being in a community is. As long as everyone's respectful, I don't see a reason that this can't continue. I mean, if you're respectful of your neighbor's views and do everything you can to make it less conspicuous, if that's a problem, I'm not going to be voting for this. I think that we don't need to over-ordinance anybody, and I'm sorry that it upset so many people, and there was such a virulent reaction, because this wasn't something that, when something hits the agenda, doesn't mean it's already been cookie pressed out. It
Right.
means it's for discussion. And so when somebody brings up a complaint, or if there is a number of people that complain of the same thing, it behooves us to discuss it as a community. And that's what we're doing. And I'm sorry that people, because I had some very virulent reaction, and some people were very cursing, and there was no need for that. We're all, I get it that it's just a discussion. And I'm, as I said, I'm not voting for it. And I don't think it's going to pass, but it's a discussion, and I think that's always good for our community.
Well, that's true. I mean, in this committee, whether an issue is controversial or not, we'll always allow an open discussion of it. And so that's something that we've committed to allow that discussion to take place. And I would say that it's good, though, that people choose to engage with their government when issues affect them. And the fact that we had a lot of feedback only helps us. I think the more interaction and feedback we have from our residents, the better our decisions are, and the better our dialogue is. And so, I think that, if it's an issue like this, even if it's controversial, if it brings people out and causes them to network with their public officials and use their voice as a citizen who's represented by all of us, that's a good thing. And so, go ahead, Dawn.
I am also voting against this. Deer hunting has been something that's going on in the state of Wisconsin longer than a lot of us have been alive. People rely on this meat that they get from deer hunting. So I don't see any reason for having such a big baa-hoo over this. Again, I am voting no for it. I don't think there's a reason to have an ordinance.
Okay. With that, we'll also allow public comment. Does anyone wish to come up and offer public comment? Come on up, sir, and state your name and address for the record.
Jack Tobolsky, and I'm at 2136 Meadowbrook Way, Wausau.
Welcome.
I have a few words here. I didn't know if any hunters would be out of the woods yet tonight to come to this meeting because it was early, so I thought I would represent them in my own crude way. So these are my feelings. Wisconsin has had a long hunting culture. It's the hunter who, through license fees, tourist dollars, and millions of dollars spent at local stores, hotels, restaurants, contribute greatly to the local tax base. What are we considering here tonight? Site policing. It's time for the city to reject the calls of just a few people to make a public policy that affects many hunters that reside in the Wausau city limits. All hunters that are lucky enough to bag a buck field dress their deer in the field. The deer is then transported home for processing. Will the city site police fine one for driving to his home, or if he leaves the animal on his car long enough to take a picture? What if someone sees him? Will he call the police? The ordinance isn't specific or clear. Many hunters don't get back home until after dark, and they're cold and hungry. They know that the cavity of the deer should be washed out, and hanging it is the most effective way. It is usually late at night before it is done, and processing is done in 1 or 2 days, depending on the outside temperature and time constraints. I can tell this council, in my 70 years of living in Wausau, that we don't have hanging poles in the front yards of so many homes that we need an ordinance. Hanging a deer in one's backyard should not be illegal. If it is unpleasant for you to look at, then don't look. It will only be there for a short time. I'm sure that the complainants have seen much worse while driving down the roads where animals have been hit by cars and they are left to decay. You just had, or we're talking about a vote on an establishment that could play music at night. Well, this is sound policing. Let me say that there are more people that are affected by unwanted music when they must get up early in the morning to go to work than are having their sleep disturbed than are affected by the Wisconsin deer hunting season. I know that not everyone likes or agrees with hunting. I do believe that education of the public as to what part hunters are doing to help keep the many wildlife species numbers healthy is lacking. I believe that this ordinance is totally unnecessary and that it would be an overreaction to a minor problem. I'd like, and I did find out in your talk previously as to how many people actually were calling in on this, which seems very minor. It's a giant problem that requires if it's a giant problem that requires a new city ordinance, or is this just merely a case of a few people not liking their neighbor? Maybe they don't agree on politics or religion. Maybe they just don't like their culture or the color of their skin. Maybe they just want to end hunting. Whatever the case, I believe that people should try to show some compassion and compromise. Your own backyard is just that. You shouldn't have to build a structure to hide what you are doing there, unless it's illegal, which is what you will be making it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to offer public comment on this issue? Come on up.
Janet Brame, 1811 Maple Hill Road, northeast part of town.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I live in Wausau, just on the edge of Wausau. I hunt deer, turkey, waterfowl, grouse, American woodcock. Actually went hunting yesterday, and I did process the birds that I harvested in my house because it was dark and at night. But most of the time I do process animals out back. Sometimes my deer I do harvest and process in my garage. So I do have that ability. I'm also a wildlife biologist, so I do know hunters' concerns and issues that would come about from this ordinance. So I feel that I'm a voice on multiple levels. The biggest thing, I used to own a duplex, recently sold, just down from Thomas Street. When my husband and I had bought that property, it did not have a garage, it did not have a structure. So at that time, I did not deer hunt, but if I would have had to process that in my backyard. And on that property, I would have had multiple people that would be able to see my backyard. So not everybody has this capability, so that's a big concern. And the biggest concern, and I'm really glad the Natural Resource Board member had called, because hunting is declining and those hunting numbers are declining, and it is a concern that the state and the whole nation are dealing with. In any way, shape, or form that may cause any additional decline is very concerning. Granted, it would probably be on a very low level as far as individuals that may leave hunting because of this. However, any effect could be a big effect, and wildlife management and and monitoring and managing population is very important for all wildlife and for all game species, and we need to continue to promote good ethics and, like you said, hopefully everybody can be good neighbors and that this isn't a big concern. But I do feel that this ordinance across the board, because it's more than just deer, it was talking about all animals, and I alone would have concern with that because I do process my birds in my backyard. So I guess I'm really glad to hear that you guys are willing for discussion, because I wasn't exactly sure what the next steps were. So I would approve of that continual discussion and would ask that this ordinance not be passed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone else wish to offer comment on this matter? Okay. And if not, I guess I'd just like to clarify that no issue arrives on our agenda decided. And so we will always have dialogue and consider public opinion, we'll consider feedback that we get from within the community, and then we'll make an educated decision. So this was by no means done. It was the starting point of a discussion, and based on a volume of public feedback, I think that it's clear what we need to do. Now, since resolutions are written in the positive, what we'll do is we'll take a motion and a second to approve the item, and everyone who's opposed to it will vote no. If the item dies in committee, it will not go forward to the city council. So do we have a motion then to approve this item? Ironic though it may seem.
Do you want a motion, or you just want to let it die for lack of a motion?
Either. We can let it die for lack of a motion. Okay. So let the record show then that no motion was made, therefore no action will be taken, and this item is then effectively failed. So it will go no further. So thank you, everyone who offered comment and feedback today. It's appreciated. Thanks for taking time to come in and talk with us. Item number 3, then, we'll go back to our original agenda order, is discussion and possible action regarding a request to waive the provisions of Section 3.06.010, Sub A, to issue a license for extraordinary financial hardship. The petitioner for that license is Brittany Patterson. Is Brittany Patterson with us this evening? Come on up, Brittany.
Hi.
Hi, talk to us a little bit about the license that you've applied for and where we're at with.
I need my liquor license to do my job at the store gas station on Stewart Avenue.
Okay.
I was denied it, or it was put on hold because of a fine that I owe.
Okay,
I believe it's around 300,
okay,
and I just don't have that amount.
It's 283.
283. Are you able to make arrangements?
Yes.
Either with the municipal court or with the clerk's office to get that fee paid?
Yes, absolutely, I can make payments, I just don't have the full amount.
Okay, do you have an estimate as far as when you'll be able to pay it off?
Maybe in like 3 months, maybe?
Could you get it cleared by the end of 2019?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Members, what are your thoughts? Are you willing to make a motion then to approve Brittany's license with the agreement that she would clear the debt by the end of the year?
If it would help, I would move that the young lady pay a quarter of it at a time for the next 4 months, make it a little easier and be around, what, $70, 72?
If I may interject, I think the payment system is set up by the judge, and the municipal court clerk is the one that processes the paperwork. I don't think we can delegate
We
what
can't set the installments.
Okay.
the judge the judge approves it if there is a payment plan, and I believe that's where Tara can help me.
Well, have you asked the judge for a payment plan?
They asked that I could do $25 every paycheck.
And what is
So
the
it-
violation for? Is it a moving violation for a vehicle or something else?
It's not a,
No,
like
it
a-
was, there was moving traffic violations
Yep,
that she
those-
owes for as well, but
Okay.
we can't hold for moving traffic.
yeah.
Right.
This one was retail theft, was the,
Okay.
which had nothing to do with the moving traffic. So that's the only thing we're holding it for. And the license was already approved months ago, so it's not a matter of not being approved. It's
It's
just
just
on
being-
hold for the fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could get it cleared by the end of the year, I think that would be helpful. And then obviously they all renew July 1st, so you'd come around again for renewals, so.
So should we have a motion pending the approval of a payment plan with the judge?
You don't have to even include that, do you? The judge works that out without our direction.
Well,
Yeah.
right, I guess the simplest thing to do, because they're a separate branch of the city, the municipal court, is if she doesn't have it paid off by July and she applies again, then she won't get her license.
Right.
Yes, that's what they told me, yeah. And
Okay.
they requested that I do at least $25 every paycheck
Okay.
until it was paid off.
I think the committee's saying, no, would like to see you
Yeah.
make more.
Yeah,
Nothing
absolutely.
on that payment plan
Mhm, yep.
keeps you from making a greater payment.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get it paid off by the end of the year.
Okay,
That would be something I could do, yeah.
all right. That, I think, would help us tremendously. Do we have a motion then to issue Brittany's license in spite of the obligation with the agreement that she would clear it by the end of the year? Motion by McElhaney, second by Herbst. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. Thank you for coming in.
I do have one question.
Sure.
When am I able to get that license then?
If you want to come in tomorrow, I can help you with that.
Okay. Okay,
Sounds
thank you.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. Okay, and then that brings us to item number 4 on our agenda, which is discussion and possible action regarding a formal expression of concern for Malarkey's Pub. You'll see that the clerk, at our direction, issued a letter to Malarkey's ownership on September 30th outlining the issues that we had noted in the last tavern report. And given the accumulation of demerit points, we've invited the owner of Malarkey's to come and talk with us about that situation. So I believe we have Tyler with us. Tyler, could you come on up and talk to us a little bit about, well, there's been, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 events that took place during the month of August. And I think the frequency of which was just concerning because it drew an awful lot of demerit points in 1 month.
I agree. I guess I thought about this quite a bit. Basically, I can't enforce any of these laws because I'm not an officer. And the best thing I can do is help to educate the tourists that come to downtown for things like the fair and the Blues Fest, which were weekends that accounted for 5 of the 7 events on here. We don't have the same city ordinances as tourists do that come from other areas of our state or the Midwest. And I don't want to from my point of view, we don't necessarily consistently enforce the same rules in different parts of our town that we do in just downtown. And so from my point of view, the best thing I can do here, the most proactive thing is to have a couple of 2-foot by 4-foot signs that say no open beverages beyond this point, as well as the largest and only bouncer in the city that has been working at our place for over 10 years. During a time we have not received any citations for anything. Serving minors alcohol hasn't been an issue. Being open after hours hasn't been an issue. 2 of the events on this report show the person that got the ticket as trying to hide their product from the police officer. Obviously, they know what they're doing is illegal. But if I have somebody from another town that's like, I'll take my chances, and they walk straight out my front door, hiding it from me or not, I can't stop them. I mean, I guess I didn't know if I'm supposed to call the police in that event. It seems as though they can get a ticket. I'm all for putting up more signs. I don't think we have any suggested courses of action as a community of things I'm supposed to post or do. I'm certainly not selling drinks to go or roadies or anything like that. We are maybe more uniquely than other bars in our community in a tourist area where we do see a lot of wedding parties that just come in with a whole horde of them from wherever they're from, and they don't maybe know our laws, and where they're from, they can have a cigarette and hold a beer. It's not a big deal. I do my best here. I'm willing to, I guess, move forward with any suggestions that you have. I mean, I could put up more signs, but when it comes right down to it, I can't lock the door, and I can't physically stop somebody. So when they're like, well, I'll take my chances, and they just kind of brush me out of the way, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So if you have any suggestions, I'd be willing to follow that course of action. If you do, let me know, I
Well,
guess.
it looked like, at least the ones that were noted in the report, a lot of those happened at night. They happened, with the exception of one, they happened after 1 AM.
Yeah.
And so, it's late. I don't know if these were weekend nights or whatever, but it sounded like the bar was quite busy when this happened.
1 and 2 were over the fair weekend, and 5,
Yep.
6, and 7 were over Blues Fest weekend.
Right, so busy weekends in town and in downtown. It looked like a few people walked out with mixed drinks or solo cups. And, at first, my first thought when I saw these, before I noticed all the times, was it happening on Wednesday night and people were buying product to carry across the street and not realizing that they couldn't mix it until they got there? Because we know that you sell closed
Right.
containers for them to take, and the bartenders do tell people, please don't open it until you get across the street. But seeing that these were not that situation and they were a different time of night, that's why we wondered. We even as a committee wondered, if you had a staffing turnover where,
There's nothing different, except that these, 2 of these weekends are literally high tourist, just.
Weekends.
I mean, the one that you have specifically, that really caught my eye was the one where the officer warned somebody, and they still didn't heed them telling them they're going to get a ticket, and an hour later got one.
Yep.
I mean, good, give them a ticket, give them 2. You know what I mean? But like, if they're not going to believe me, and they're not going to believe our police, what can I do at this point? I mean, I can't wrestle it from them, So, I mean, we're definitely doing our best here, but like, I can't like just tie a guy to a tree or something. I mean, I can't take someone's possession from them. They can just walk out my door. It's not as though we're just ignoring the problem. It's not, and actually I'd like to also point out, had any of these been brought up during the time frame they were happening, we could have taken action then. I didn't even hear about this until it was in the paper. So I didn't even know it was a problem that needed to be addressed. But anyway, I'm here on good faith to do that now.
Deputy Chief Barnes, do you have any ideas or any thoughts to offer to Tyler for anything else that they can do?
No, just my observations. Tyler's been in business in the downtown area for quite some time. I wouldn't say we've always agreed, but what I can say is they run a professional establishment. They've always been willing to communicate with us, try and work toward a solution. This was a very short period of time where there were multiple incidents. I think the challenges that Tyler's discussing that Malarkey's deal with, many of our establishments do. And there's no prescription I can give you that says none of these things will ever happen. I think you're right. It's educating the public, and I know you do that, and you're willing to have those conversations.
Sure.
I also think it's, from a management standpoint, it's making sure your staff are diligent, that if they do see someone walking out the door, they make an attempt to stop them and say, hey, dump the beer.
We chase
you can't-"
people all the time.
Yep, and I know that you do.
Yeah.
And I would, this isn't a major, I know the chief mentioned at the last meeting, he's not worked up over this issue because, the one that I think is within your control is, it sounds like there were some underage people that had been drinking not in your establishment, but outside your establishment.
Do you want to know more information on that one?
Well, I read
I'd
the
be happy to
citations.
provide it with you, to you.
Sure.
Yeah, and
So those 3 individuals were drinking at a different bar downtown and ran into my bar away from the police that had been called on them.
Oh,
We didn't
my.
have a chance to even address them, and the police were already, that's why they weren't served at our place.
Okay.
But I also can't clothesline somebody running into my bar. I mean, I do
Right.
my best to present, a presence and some rule of order, but if somebody
Mm-hmm.
runs in, I can't physically restrain them from just running through my space. It doesn't happen very often, thankfully, but we didn't serve those people. I mean, I do believe my bouncer when he said that he checked their IDs, or it means they were underage drinking without IDs at another bar downtown that was where the call was initiated from. But yeah, that was just one we got caught in the middle of and we didn't serve them, and we didn't
Right.
really have a chance to even do anything about it because you guys were like on the spot.
Yeah,
which
my
is great.
interpretation of this meeting is simply, yes, these were situations that occurred with Malarkeys, and the ordinances and the laws of the state of Wisconsin having to do with the serving of alcohol are important to this committee and this community, and it's just a conversation to make sure we reinforce that that's the case. And
Right.
when different licensed drinking establishments have multiple issues in a short period of time, from a consistency standpoint, they get a letter and they come visit this committee, and there's a conversation about that. That's all
Well,
I
and
see.
it happens when 100 demerit points are accumulated at any point, and obviously over time, those gradually come off.
Right.
And it appears that yours, kind of all came on, and will all come off at the same time because
Well,
it was a
hopefully.
couple of bad weeks, so.
But if I get all these actually assessed to me, and I have another thing that happens to me in the next year, I can lose my business, and all my employees could lose their jobs. And I can't even be accountable to stop these things. I mean, I'm willing to take, if I'm underage serving people, if I'm open after hours, I mean, give me the points. I understand that. I've messed up. But in these situations, there's really nothing legally I can do. All I can ask you for as the body that would recommend that these points get assessed to me is there anything else you'd like to see me do? Because if there isn't, I'm not sure what I could do about this. I mean, I know we're hoping it never happens again and all
Well,
that,
I
but
think if
we have a
you're-
lot of tourism.
I think
in
if
our
you're
town.
taking a proactive approach, though,
Sure.
to control at the bar and control at the door, that really is all you can do. And it sounds like you've taken that approach. You've got someone posted at the door. If you see someone leaving, you try to stop them.
Right.
You've got a good policy in force for checking people's IDs, and that really is what we look for.
Okay.
And, we don't see malarkeys very often on our report. I mean, once in a great while, something happens, but it's not, this was just an inordinately large amount of things all at
Right,
once.
right.
And when we saw that it was 125 points proposed, we thought, oh, well, maybe we better, talk with the owner. And in the interest of treating all license holders the same, once anybody gets to 100, we think that we should have at least a conversation, which is what this is. It's certainly not a movement to suspend the license. It's not a movement to take any punitive action against the bar. It's just not. So, that said, you've always been proactive whenever we've had issues, whether it was noise or whatever it was, you've always found a remedy. And, we used to have a problem where people would go out and leave the door open and the music would get out and, you get a call and you'd shut the door right away and everything was fine. And so the fact that you have that cooperative relationship when things happen is half the reason that we know that you're not a frequent flyer on these reports.
Sure.
And, I think that, I guess committee members, do you have any questions for Tyler? Go ahead, Pat.
I don't have any questions, but I just have a couple thoughts. One is that, should you, Mr. Vogt, have another mishap or incident in front of your business, it's not an automatic that we're going to institute revocation proceedings. I mean, it's.
Right, I understand. This
it's
is just a
all,
recommendation.
it
I'm just coming
could
here to make
happen,
sure I don't
if
lose
it
all
was
these points.
Terrible.
Right.
And I hate the idea, if I were you, I would not like the idea of putting up big ugly signs,
I have them.
but
They're already up.
I think, maybe the thing that's been learned is that when you know that these events are in town and there are not going to be a lot of visitors in your establishment, that maybe then you haul those signs out. But otherwise, as far as like when the incident is happening, I think if you had some points, amassed like you do now, and there was an incident this coming weekend, and you went out and spoke to somebody and they defied you, I would call the cops and tell the individual, this is my license. You're screwing up my license. I'm calling the cops.
Sure. I mean, I respect that, but to me, it's like, telling you when I see people speeding. I mean, it's just like, I don't know how to describe it really, but the very presence of the police in front of my business is not great for business either. So to call them every time somebody's uncle was at a wedding and is wandering back to the Jefferson Street Inn is hard for me to want to shut my night down at that point. I mean, I respect what you're saying. If that's what you'd like me to do is call every time I see somebody with a Solo Cup walking around and you have to go test it. I mean, by all means, I can do that if that would help you.
Well, if your concern is accumulating more points and putting your business at risk.
Right.
I can tell you that having monitored this for many years, when something outside your control but affects your business occurs and you are the reporting person to law enforcement, hey, just want to let you guys know, I had a couple people that boogied out of here, told them not to take it with them.
Right.
We don't assess points to you. So if
Right.
if you want to protect yourself from those points, then I would strongly encourage you to communicate those issues to law enforcement. And the difference between what you're describing and calling every time you see someone speeding is every time you see someone speeding, it doesn't affect your potential livelihood. And in this
Right.
case, per your own statement, it does. So
Sure.
I would encourage you to have, if that's a concern of yours, then absolutely, give us a call. That doesn't mean we're going to, I guarantee you, there will be no lights and siren responding to
Cool.
felony open intoxicant on the sidewalk.
That would be
But
nice.
I also know that if you're the one reporting issues to us and things that patrons aren't listening to your staff, we don't assess points to people in that situation.
No, that proactive approach, I think, certainly helps.
Sure.
And it's good. I mean, the committee obviously can't take away the points. The committee doesn't approve or remove the points. They're assessed by the police department, and they manage that program entirely, and that's specifically to remove the politics from it. So, that said, the points are what they are, but I think that we also consider establishments on a case-by-case basis as far as what the trend has been, what's actually happening, what, is making up the total of these, point accumulating violations. And, when the committee gets concerned, we get concerned anytime there's 100 points, but it also matters what those 100 points are for. Is it, guns and knives? We've had that in here before. Is it underserving? Is it overserving? We've had, when we've had to pull a Class B beer and liquor license, it's not just because one person or two walked out the door. There's way more serious things going on. And, all we have ever asked is that people are able to go to an establishment, have a good time, and leave safely. And so that happens at your place all the time. That's just not, it's not a danger zone. We've had some other ones that really were, and, we dealt with them accordingly, but, I think it's good that we had this dialogue. So, does anybody else have anything? If not, I think we're good.
All right.
So, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for your time.
You bet. Okay, then that brings us to item number 5, discussion and possible action regarding ordinance creating section 10.48.121, trespassing on parking meter lot or ramp, and section 10.48.122, possession and consumption of intoxicants prohibited. And you'll see a sample of a couple of ordinances that are proposed in our code to address some situations specific to public parking, ramps, lots, and structures. And I guess, Deputy Chief Barnes, do you want to walk us through a little bit of the issue that's been happening there? Or Tara, would you like to, I guess, walk us through, how we got to this point as a community?
Oh, well, I can address the need for that, which is, I think most of the committee realizes that we have been dealing with complaints from our downtown businesses in regards to people that are homeless, sleeping and staying in the stairwells of our parking ramps, which are used by our downtown businesses. And the complaints range from physical waste being on the stairwells to people just trying to go to work, park their car, and decide they're going to take the stairs instead of the elevator, and they have to step over a human being who's asleep on the stairwell because they're seeking shelter at that point in time, because our stairwells are protected from the rain and the elements and heated. And there's a desire on law enforcement to go kick them out, and that they shouldn't be in these ramps sleeping there. We don't have, there's no law against sleeping in a ramp. There's no ordinance against being there. So what we're asking the city council to do, if the desire of the council is to not have people sleeping and staying in our ramp stairwells and in our ramps, then we need a law in place that allows us to enforce that. Currently, we very politely, with a little push, ask people to move along out of the ramps, but at the end of the day, if someone said, no, I'm not leaving, I can't point to a law or an ordinance that allows us to remove them. So that's really what we're looking for, is to create a safe environment that have ramps function the way that this council intended them to do when they built them. We need a law in place that allows us to enforce them.
That great background. And, I think that, the council has recognized, and I know that we've recognized as a committee also that, Wausau has issues with homelessness, and it has issues with vagrancy. It also has issues with public intoxication. And on a piecemeal approach, we have taken steps to address all of those things on some level. But I think that our community approach to homelessness, our net goal needs to ultimately find ways that less people become homeless. There's a lot of people that are just on the bubble, and there's a lot of people that, and there's a lot of great nonprofit organizations in our community that work with those interventions. And, I think that, whether it's an initiative that connects people with services and makes sure that, fewer people are either homeless or becoming homeless, that is a fantastic effort, and the council is looking and has looked for ways that it can impact that situation and find out if there's, policy ways that we can remove roadblocks to those services getting delivered to people who need them. But separately, the other prong of that approach is that certain areas that are conducive to creating an environment where people's perception of safety is negative, I think hardening up some of those areas from a policy standpoint also makes sense. And, we've received a number of complaints based on activity that takes place in the ramps. Now, you'll note in the ordinance as it's drafted, the intoxicant consumption provision of this has an exemption built in for special events. So if an event is taking place in a public lot as part of, any other public event, or an event that we have issued a permit for. At one point, an event was proposed for the top of the Jefferson Street ramp, a rooftop party. The exemption in this ordinance would allow events like that to still take place unimpeded, but it would be events that, we've issued a permit for, and at that point, all of the internal departments have signed off on the activity. Separate from that, this does, like Matt said, really harden up those areas and make it possible for them to have a policy that will remedy, at least the River District hopes will remedy some of these situations that are taking place in public lots. Committee members, do you have any questions? Go ahead, Pat.
By the time, if we pass this tonight, it looks like it makes sense and is very complete and thorough, and thank you very much. But if we pass this, by the time we get it enacted at council, the warming center is going to be open. It opens November 1st, so we'll probably have a reduced level of problem. But I guess I'd just like to have the deputy chief tell us how the handling of the situation by an officer on the scene is going to change as a result of this. And I'm pretty sure the officer is not going to put the individual in an arm lock and throw them bodily down the stairs and kick them on their way out the door. But
Surely not.
Well, we're definitely not going to kick them.
talk to me about that. I mean, right now you're going and saying, sir, you need to wake up and get out of here.
Correct.
But what changes?
The sir hasn't told us no yet. Now, they
Okay.
have, by the time we're staffing and going through the ramps, we kick them out of the northeast stairwell and ask them to move along, and then by the time we make it to the southwest stairwell, there they are, taking a nap again. So one would think that it makes us feel better as officers if we're going to remove someone from a heated place to know that there is a organization like Catholic Charities in the warming center that we can take that person. But even historically, while the warming center is open, there are individuals that would prefer, or they choose to try and stay in the stairwells as opposed to going to the warming center. So this was a problem throughout the winter months last year when the warming center was open. We don't have a staff of heartless police officers. We work really hard to make sure that we don't. And the idea of kicking someone out into the weather without an option to send them somewhere is a situation we don't want to find ourselves in. So we're very grateful to the Salvation Army and the Warming Center and the different nonprofit organizations that you discussed. Currently, we staff CSOs that come in at the early hours of the morning to patrol our ramps and try and clear them of individuals. And it's not necessarily a case of, hey, we don't want someone to be warmer out of the elements. I put myself in this situation, and if I had a daughter that was working downtown or my wife was working downtown and parked in the ramps and decided, you know, I'm an elevator guy, but trust me, my wife will say, let's take the stairs, you need more steps, Matt. So the idea that I would have to step over a human being or have her step over a human being, it's a fear. One of the things law enforcement wants to do is create an environment where people aren't in fear for their safety. And the idea that someone who might not have the hygiene that that individual's used to and have to step over them to get to work, that's not an environment conducive to growth of our downtown area and successful businesses. So nothing's going to change. We're not going to armbar anyone. There's not going to be any super ninja fighting going on to get people out of the ramps. This is simply to have a law in place that supports the actions that we're doing. And if somebody refuses to leave at that point in time, then that situation could escalate to where they might be arrested and be taken to the county jail or removed from that area by force, because we have a law and that protects our staff and our city to be able to have officers enforcing a law, not enforcing wishes.
Well, and I think perception is kind of everything. I think when people have a perception that an area is not safe, you can tell them it's safe all you want, but that's not going to change their mind. I think that when you have, and this happens in all the ramps, it doesn't just happen at Jefferson Street. I've seen people sleeping in the McClellan ramp before. I've seen people sleeping in the mall stairwells before. And it's not, just that, it's other functions that are taking place in those stairwells as well. And so, I think that from a safety standpoint and people's perception of safety when they have to utilize those public facilities to get to and from work, something like this certainly makes sense. Dawn, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, it says any person violating this is subject to a forfeiture of $50. If these people are homeless, where's this money going to come from if there's a forfeiture of $50?
The city generally does not collect those funds from those individuals. But understand that by having an ordinance that our officers can go enforce, someone refusing to comply, then it might escalate to a disorderly situation that allows us to apply state statute to that,
Okay.
to at least be able to deal with that particular situation at that moment. And I just think something that I feel the need to say to the committee is, this is a Band-Aid, to your point, Lisa, that you made earlier. This is a Band-Aid to a much larger problem. Or the other way to look at it is, since we're talking about stairs, it's 10 flights of stairs that we as a community have to climb, and we're taking the first step. There are issues within our parks, there are issues within drinking, there are issues within mental health and AODA rehab facilities available. There's issues affecting how many people are on the bubble, how many people are actually living out and about. The warming center's only open from November 1st through, I wish I knew the date, in the spring when it closes. There are lots of issues we have to deal with that are affecting our community, and this is just one. But we feel like in order to protect our downtown businesses and continue to have an environment that thrives, that can support some of these other initiatives, passing this ordinance and giving us this tool is a great first step. You got to take the first one before you take the third one.
Indeed. Anyone else have a question or comment? Oh, go ahead, Dave, come on up.
Thank you, Chairman. Dave Nutting, 534 South First Avenue, Alderman, 3rd District. This is my district, and our businesses there in the Jefferson Ramp, as well as other businesses, have requested this from me. They have workers that are working after 5, 6, 7, and 8 p.m., and they have to traverse through the stairway and into the parking area, and they have admitted to their employers that they're afraid and they're scared, or as this is a very inconvenient thing, and it does exactly say what you said, sir, that this does not bode well for our community. The trouble is Wausau is a community, is a county seat, and county seats all across our state attract because there are services that provide for the homeless. You don't see these services or these issues in the townships or in the villages around us. They're in the cities because we have services. Another unfortunate thing is that the Warming Center may not, or the Salvation Army may not be accepting certain individuals because they have proven themselves unfit to be in those places also. They've been kicked out. And so we need another alternative. And the alternative may indeed be the county jail for that brief moment, but there must be another option where those that are unable to be accepted at these other places we have another way to do that. So we do need to support this to give the tool to our law enforcement that they are missing right here. So thank you, sir.
Thank you for that. It's certainly not our goal to treat our homeless population like it's Wausau's dirty little secret. I think we know that we have a lot of problems that other larger cities have. We may have them on a smaller scale, but, you know, we're certainly not strangers to that. I think that going forward, we can certainly look at initiatives and some policy decisions in connection with the nonprofits that provide these services to folks in need. If there are policies that we have on our books that are roadblocks to their work, we certainly need to identify what those are and figure out how we can, you know, perhaps make some amendments that can remove those roadblocks to those services reaching the people that need them. But at this point, we also have to have a perception of safety in public facilities where people are using them at, you know, various hours of the night and day. So with that, do we have a motion to approve this ordinance? Motion by Herbst, second by Peckham. Further discussion or questions? Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. And that brings us to item number 7, which is the operations report from the fire department for September of 2019. We have the report in the packets. Any items on the report that you wish to discuss, committee? If not, we can place their report on file. Any items of note, Assistant Chief, that you want to talk about on the report?
This is the September report. We had some larger incidents that occurred earlier in October that we'll have on the next month's agenda, but September, pretty much a normal month, busy, but nothing of high acuity that you'd probably be interested in discussing tonight.
Sounds good. All right, so with that, we'll place the fire department report on file. Item number 8 is tavern activities, compliance checks, and law enforcement activities, and you've got that report in the packets. Anything that you wish to discuss on that report tonight? Go ahead, Pat.
The only thing I would say is that it's 5 pages long.
It is. I mean, there's a fair amount of activity. Anything on the report or any particular establishments that you wish to discuss, Deputy Chief?
No, I talked to the chief about that. He agreed that it was long, but they're common issues that we see, I think, to the point Tyler made earlier, although he's not here. Like, we have issues at all of our bars, and we address those, and we talk to those bar owners, so nothing specific there.
Okay.
I did have one question. For perhaps the 4th page in, M&R Station, wondering, there was an event at 2:30 a.m., and I'm wondering how it might have actually warranted 2 sets of demerit points, one for the open after hours and the other one for the active effort to conceal that they were open after hours and not being honest with the officer that responded. If that was my nickel, I think would have hit him twice, but judgment call at the time, I guess.
Go ahead.
So I'm totally unprepared because of an incident that's occurring in Wausau as we speak, so I don't have my bar report with me. Is your question is there were 2 sets of demerit points, or there was 1 set of demerit points?
There's only one that says the bartender claimed there was no one else in the bar, and after the officer left and looked back inside, there were 2 people inside, and so they went back inside and made contact with the bartender, who tried to claim, again, there was nobody else inside, and the two other people were found hiding behind the bar. For me, that's 2 violations, but
Well,
I guess if the message was,
I think the message is delivered. That's an establishment that we have regular
Okay.
contact with. But what I will do is the Lieutenant Mike Felder, who puts this bar report together and makes the recommendation for points, I will share your sentiment with him. He's working this evening.
Well, and one thing, I mean, that's the thing, it wasn't so that even wasn't the alarming part. The alarming part was the next sentence that says, 2 other people were found hiding behind the bar after the other male tried obstructing the lieutenant from checking behind the bar. So they knew full well that there were people in there and made every effort they could to keep him from finding that out. And so that I find concerning. And so, you know, we've had in the past, based on the history, we've had discussions with Rick about things that have taken place at M&R. You know, certainly this is not something that we love to see on the report. I don't know where they're at for their demerits total, but I think some of their stuff has come off. I guess I'd have to take a look and see where they're at on this list.
And it looks like they're at 25 points.
They're at 25, so some of the stuff they'd had in the past has come off. So, you know, that said, I think if you're having a discussion with the bar owner, that it would be a good idea to let him know that the committee was not real impressed with the idea that they were proactively seeking to obstruct the police from doing their work. So,
We'll deliver that message.
okay. Anything else then about the report? If not, we'll place the tavern report on file as well. Item 9 is communications. I have none. Does anyone have anything? If not, then a motion to adjourn is appropriate. Motion by Herbst, second by Peckham. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No one wants to stay. We'll stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone.